Meet your new go-to for a fresh and inclusive approach to health.
Wellness Rebranded is the pod where a dietitian, a personal trainer, and a mental health therapist combine perspectives to help you redesign your relationship with food, fitness, and your feelings.
Whether we're serving up juicy stories, breaking down the latest research, or dropping practical tips, we'll leave you informed, inspired, and ready to take health promoting action.
We get you because we are you.
We've joined forces because we know that health isn't one-dimensional, and neither are you.
Tune in for real talk that cuts through the wellness and diet culture hype. Stay for the laughs, the insights, and the feel-good vibes. So, ladies, my friends, have you been hearing a lot of buzz about protein lately? Because I know I have. I can actually, I feel like at least 6 people this week have asked me to talk about protein and to clarify it, or ask me what I thought about what they're hearing out in the world, or just have so many questions about protein.
What are you hearing out in the world? Because I have like 117 questions about protein. But what do we hear in the world about protein?
Well, I think the overarching thing we hear out in the world, aka diet culture, is eat more, eat more, eat more, and just kind of this message that you have to eat insane amounts of protein, especially if you're a woman in perimenopause or menopause.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so that's what I hear. I'm sure you hear other things, but tell me I'm not alone in this, like everybody's talking about protein.
You're definitely not alone. I also have gotten a bunch of questions over the past couple weeks about how much protein should we be getting, how much is enough, how much is too much, and how can I get more in? Because inevitably, when my clients start like looking at it, they all think they're not getting enough protein. So,
Yeah, fair point. And so, for example, one of the many ways that I got asked this question just recently was someone sent me a message on a DM on Instagram and said, "Hey, can you give me some tips for eating more protein?" And my immediately in my head, I didn't have an answer. I had questions, right? Which is, well, tell me what are you currently doing, right? How much protein are you currently getting? How much protein do you think you're aiming for? Why, and I think the person even said I'm struggling to get it in. Well, what about it feels like a struggle? Is that you don't know where to get it, that you don't know, you know, how much you're supposed to be eating, that you're trying to eat so much that it feels like a struggle, that you don't know how to incorporate it in meals, like, and I don't mind at all that the person sent me the message, but it's just one, it's on everyone's mind because I think there's so much noise about protein right now. But also, and also, does that person have any health conditions that I should be aware of, right? What are their activity levels? What it's just I guess I'm bringing that up because I really want to drive home the point that nutrition is nuanced. That's why you can't just go on Instagram or Facebook or some website and then think you know what your body needs, because there's so many variables that are going to change what your body needs. And that's I think a lot of people don't understand that.
So, do we need to eat more protein?
Maria's like, so could you just tell me what the answer is on protein? Okay, well, here's the thing. In my opinion, you know how back in the 90s there was sort of like the low fat craze and everybody didn't like fat, right?
yeah.
And then it turned to the low carb, like let's demonize carbs. And then it turned to, when we were going low fat, then everyone was inadvertently getting high sugar. And, it's kind of, in my opinion, this madness around protein right now is just diet culture's latest darling. There's like a health halo around protein at the moment. And when the truth is protein important? 100%. Absolutely. We need it. Is it more important than the other macronutrients or micronutrients? No. I mean, it's one of many. We need them all. So just I have an issue with the way it's being presented in general, I suppose. And I've heard people coming and saying, oh, I'm listening to so and so, and they said I need this much protein in a day. And it's really, really high. And in my opinion, the research doesn't support that. It's difficult to answer your question, Maria, is like, well, how much protein do I need? I can tell you that the dietary guidelines or the RDA is basically zero point 0.8 grams of protein for every kilogram of body weight. Now, immediately everyone's like, I don't know how many kilograms I weigh. I know how many pounds I weigh. And actually, I try not to weigh myself if you're one of our listeners. So all of a sudden, I'm having to do a lot of math and a lot of things.
Don't put me down for math.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just like the general recommendation, right? There's a lot of controversy among professionals about how much protein people really need.
I just want to say that I think a lot of the controversy comes from the fitness industry. I don't know when we got on this train and when we stopped talking about lifting weights and moving our bodies and started talking about, protein, but we're very firmly in the protein realm right now. And even though the RDA says zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, I know a lot of fit pros that are talking about like 1.2 to 1.7 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And I think that like tracking your food sucks. I understand that sometimes we need to do it just to get curious about what we're actually intaking. But for people who are in like larger bodies, zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight is hella different than 1.7 grams. So it's like physically not even possible to eat that much protein for people in like much larger bodies. So something to consider.
Yeah, and I think I've actually heard people being told even higher amounts than that, like more than double what the RDA is. And they're selling it as like, well, but if you're doing strength training and resistance training, which you definitely should be doing in perimenopause and menopause, then you need like this added extra amount of protein. I am a nerd and I like to be cautious. So I've done many times done deep dives into the research to see what it actually shows. Like where are people what is it that people where are they getting their information when they're the recommended daily allowances. It's basically a government guidelines for. Now some people say, well, yeah, that tells you what is like the minimal amount of protein you need. It doesn't necessarily tell you what's optimal. Okay, maybe. As a dietitian, there are definitely things that increase your protein needs. If you're an athlete, yeah, okay. If you have different diseases may increase your protein needs. If you are aging, yes, you may need a little bit more protein. But does that mean double what the guidelines are? I'm going to go in most cases, no. And then, but there are a whole group of people out there, especially women at my age of life, who now are aiming for a protein target that is in many cases well above what the dietary guidelines state. And just because they've heard it online or from some influencer that they follow. And I guess I have a more conservative approach to nutrition. I agree that maybe you need a little bit more than is in the guidelines in certain scenarios. And perhaps at this stage of life, people are losing muscle mass as you age, you're losing bone mass. Protein is going to help counter that. But uh, what I usually say, obviously, if someone's in my office meeting with me, I can help you figure out a little bit more precisely based on many of the factors that I kind of started off the show saying. But generally speaking, if someone asks me kind of outside of a counseling session, my answer is it starting to feel like a full-time job to get as much protein as you think you're aiming for every day? If so, that's a clue that maybe you're aiming for something too high. The truth is, the way it's presented in diet culture is like there's this crisis of people are not getting enough protein. That's actually not true. I actually looked it up this morning. It's like 8% of what I saw, a number in a research study was 8% of Americans are not getting the amount of protein that they need, meaning they're not meeting the dietary guidelines. And it there's heavy overlap with, so, of course, socioeconomic status.
Guys, I just want to point out like what a nerd Elizabeth is because she sent me a document this morning that's like literally 20 pages of research studies to support all of this stuff that she's talking about right now. Because of course, coming from the fitness background, like everything I've ever learned has skewed like slightly higher than what she's talking about. But the research is really clear here, I think. Like based on all the things you sent this morning, like I'm completely on board with like, yeah, 0.8 grams, maybe a little bit more if you lift really heavy frequently, but it seems that she has done her work.
Well, and I want to be clear that, yeah, there is parts of the fitness industry or like certain types of athletes that I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about you and me and whomever in our phase of life. And I mean, I train with you, Tara, twice a week, and all we do is lift heavy weights. I don't do it a ton outside of that, but I do other weight bearing exercise. And I know I've gained muscle in working with you, and I haven't been really dramatically increasing my protein. I'm mindful to get protein in my meals and my snacks, and I think it's important, but I'm not doubling what the RDA says, I can tell you that.
Hi, I'm Alice-Ann Loftus, the founder of Leading Lady Coaching. As a business coach, consultant, and leadership expert, I help high-achieving women build successful, sustainable businesses without burnout. With years of experience as an entrepreneur, I know firsthand the challenges women face in business and leadership. That's why I'm passionate about empowering women to step into their confidence, create businesses that work for them, and lead with both strategy and heart. Through my coaching, online communities, and live workshops, I provide the tools and support you need to thrive, not just in business, but in life. If you're ready to take the lead and build a business that truly serves you, I'd love to connect. Visit www.leadinglady-coaching.com and follow me on Instagram and Facebook for daily inspiration and expert advice. Let's make success feel as good as it looks.
Hey guys, it's Tara here, and if you're feeling like a burnt out piece of toast, I've got my second quarter Relax and Renew, the Hour of Progressive Relaxation class coming up on May 6th at 7 p.m. at the Collective in Annapolis. There's no sweating, no squats, just deep breaths, soft vibes, and maybe a blanket burrito. Your nervous system will thank you, so grab your spot today.
Okay, so let's squash this for a minute, okay? For lay people like me that are not nerdies or know anything about dietitian. So, I'm going to share with you what my brain has stored that I've heard from social media or wherever. Okay, number one, protein powders. According to my brain and what I heard somewhere, I should be adding some protein powder to my morning coffee or my morning smoothie, supposedly to start the day. Because I don't have breakfast. I'm not a breakfast person. It's really hard for me to eat breakfast. So, supposedly, that scoop of protein powder, again, in my brain, is going to help me go through the day more nourished than not. Okay, that's one. Wait, hold your horses. Number two.
It's going to be hard for me to remember them all, though.
Okay. Okay, just number two. In my brain, also stored from somewhere, if I'm gonna have a salad, let's say a Caesar salad, it's better for me to have that salad with the added chicken that they put in restaurants sometimes, like add chicken for this much. If I'm gonna have the Alfredo pasta, it's better with the chicken, because it makes it more of a balanced meal, adding the protein. Those are my two questions so far.
That is true. I mean, I would say if pasta is your meal, that's your dinner, yes, it is a good idea to add protein to it. If your lunch is Caesar salad, it is a good idea to add protein to it because you basically want to get adequate protein throughout the day to meet your needs. The research is clear that spreading it out throughout the day, so like I hesitate to give numbers here because it's so I'm going to shy away from giving numbers even though I could. But having a serving of protein, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and maybe including it in a snack or two throughout the day, depending how big your meals are. That's better than just eating all of your protein, say, at the end of the day. So, like, I'm thinking about my husband, for example, doesn't eat breakfast. He often doesn't eat lunch. And then even if he could consume all the protein that is required for his body at dinner alone, well, after, maybe the research is like after 25 to 30 grams in a serving, it's not actually going to help you build muscle after that anyway. So it's better to spread it out throughout the day. So you're right. I counsel my clients to build a balanced meal that includes protein at meal times. Now, I mean, is it the world going to end if like tomorrow you have pasta and it doesn't have protein? No, but as a general rule, that's what I would steer you towards. And then for the protein powder, very individualized. I think that I thought you were going to say something a little different when you started that sentence, that like you thought you should maybe be putting protein powder in everything, or in order to meet it. And then people will ask, well, is it okay to meet it with protein powder? And like, sure, it can be a strategy to have protein powder in your smoothie if that's your meal. Do you have to use protein powder in order to meet your protein needs? No, not necessarily. There are plenty of ways to meet it just through food.
And now you made me think of another thing I have in my brain. This is for the two of you. The message that don't have protein if you're not exercising that day. Like I've heard this. Like have the protein powder after you exercise to help build that muscle. Or yeah, like basically don't have that protein powder if it's gonna be a day of laying down at the beach. Is that true?
Well, if you're using protein powder as a protein source after a workout, because including protein after workout helps you build muscle, well, then, yeah, maybe you wouldn't need it. But if you're using protein powder to help meet your protein needs throughout the day, then you could have it on a day you're not working out. If
What are my protein needs?
Okay, we're going to set up a counseling session,
Thank
Maria,
you, yes.
so that I can give you individualized guidance.
Well, that's a good point. If you need to know what your protein needs are, call Elizabeth and have
But to answer your other question about, well, I'm putting it in my coffee, I would say coffee is not a meal. And so if that's all you're eating, well, maybe you could put protein powder in your coffee, but you could also have some eggs.
So, Elizabeth, talk to me about the harms of eating too much protein. I bring this up because I have a client who's been trying to increase her protein intake, and she's a busy mom, and her boys are all like teenagers at this point, so they're going through groceries like it's going out of style. And she's been doing a lot of like animal-based protein, and she just got blood work back that her cholesterol is now higher than it should be. So she's very concerned about that. And I know that vegetarian sources of protein exist, but they don't usually have as much protein as like many of the animal sources do. So is how much is too much, and how can we make better protein selections?
So again, how much is too much is going to be individualized. Are you guys sensing a theme here? But I think the question you're trying to ask is, can too much protein be harmful? Like, is there a downside to eating too much protein? And to be honest, it's an area like researchers are still trying to figure it out exactly. There used to be research to show that it was, too much protein could impact your kidneys. Seems like some later research, at least some of it is not as clear on that. So it's in a gray area, I would say. But we do know that eating too much protein and too few fluids could lead to kidney stones. And I guess it depends, again, going back to the individualized guidance. Well, if you are someone who's out there who's been told, okay, and you're aiming for probably what I would say is most likely too high of a like an unnecessary amount of protein, Well, where are you getting it from, right? Are you now eating a lot of animal proteins higher in saturated fat? Well, that's maybe not great for heart health. Or are you just adding in more protein and then now you're just eating more overall than you actually needed because you were just trying to aim for more and more protein? Well, okay, that might not be ideal. So it really depends on your individual circumstances, but the proteins that we want to steer people toward are the leaner proteins. So chicken, turkey, fish, lean. If you're going to have, red meat, like the 93% lean, the leaner cuts, like not the skin on the poultry is more saturated fat, right? Plant-based proteins are awesome. Beans, seeds, legumes, nuts. They're, if you're going to use protein powder, there are some that are better than others. Whey protein is a good option for people, if it that is obviously milk based. So if you can't tolerate that, pea protein, hemp protein, some of the like plant say based proteins, but it depends on your circumstances. And so, Maria, does this clear up your protein confusion in any way? Or I feel like that was about as clear as mud.
No, no, I mean it's helpful because you're right. Many times we hear a lot of things, and in my mind right now, I understand protein's good in moderation, like everything else, without going on that trend of let's overdo something and then adding it to regular meals during the day. And I think, yeah, maybe the protein in the morning for breakfast, in my case, because I don't have breakfast, better than a toast, is probably avocado. Is that protein? It's fat, that's right. So actually, that's a good question. If you give me a list of really common, easy to get protein sources at the supermarket besides chicken, beef, turkey, fish, what is it? Is nuts, eggs, the yellow, the white part of the egg, or all of it? Okay. Eggs, nuts, what else?
Well, then all the plant-based ones, tofu, tempeh, beans, nuts, seeds, yeah, legumes, yeah, edamame, yeah, all the nuts, legumes, seeds. I mean, those are the main ones.
Even things like broccoli.
Yeah, I mean, foods have different macronutrients, right? So we group them by like what it is predominantly. It doesn't mean that there's no protein in other foods. There are, but but we look at like what's the main component of the food.
Let me tell you guys this funny thing. So I teach at the community college, right? And one of our classes is like health. So like most of it is fitness based, but then we also talk a little bit about nutrition, chronic diseases, things like that. And one time I had this student do this project and he brought in two plates and one had on like a 4 ounce piece of ribeye and one had like 12 crowns of broccoli, like the whole piece of broccoli. And he was like, "Oh, what do these plates have in common?" And the whole class, including me, was like, they look delicious. Like, I don't know. And he's like, they have the same amount of protein in them. So that's not to say you can't get protein from vegetables, obviously. It's just that you have to eat a much larger quantity to equal the same amount often. Not always, but often. But it was a great visual image.
Yeah. And I don't want to misrepresent it. I do believe that everyone's protein needs increase as you age to combat muscle wasting and sarcopenia and all the things. I just don't think it's as high as people are being led to believe. Or that the research, like I've yet to see really compelling, clear research that is that high that I would feel comfortable standing behind it.
So I do eat whatever I want, basically, but I try to eat a higher protein diet because of my polycystic ovaries. I need to eat lower carb, which usually means higher protein. And one of the things that I like is a protein bar because it's convenient, it's shelf stable, it gives me a little bit of protein, and it usually tastes good. So it's just something that is helpful in my life. Do you have thoughts on protein bars, Elizabeth?
Gosh, you guys are really going deep here. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a strategy. I actually have.
It's a good snack.
Shout out to Perfect Bar. I have a Perfect Bar in my bag right now. Perfect Bar, if you're out there, you could sponsor the pod. I recommend you all the time. That's what I'm having for lunch today because I didn't have anything else in the fridge that I could grab, and I have some fruit with it and other things. But so yeah, I mean, I think that there's a place for protein bars. Do I think, do I think all of your protein should come from protein bars? No, I don't. But
Wide variety of food is always good.
yeah, yeah. And the pattern of how many times have I said it's the pattern, your overall patterns of eating matter most. And yes, it is important to get protein, but it is probably unnecessary to get some of these excessive extreme amounts of protein that I'm hearing people recommend. How you eat most often matters most. So diet culture likes to put a lot of pressure on a specific meal or a specific food. And I like to zoom out and look at the overall pattern of how you eat. Do you get plenty of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and lean proteins and beans and nuts and seeds and whole nutrient dense foods? How you eat, what and how you eat most often matters most. And the point in sharing that is like, one, that's what we know best from the research, because we're not robots that eat in laboratory settings. We're humans that eat a lot of foods in a wide variety of settings. But also, it can take pressure off of an individual meal. It's what's your pattern? That's what I'm looking at when I'm working with people, or at least we're starting there. We can fine tune it from there, but you got to start with the overall pattern. And it's kind of like, I don't know, a lot of times what I feel like gets lost in diet culture is so much pressure on like, oh, you got to eat this one particular superfood, let's say. And it's like, well, okay, but that's kind of like focusing on a marathon before you've gotten off the couch. Like, let's look at the rest of it.
I call that mowing your grass while your house is on fire. It's just such like a wasted energy to focus on that one little teeny tiny thing. So, anyway, I hope this episode was helpful for you. I hope you enjoy your protein and don't feel like you have to force feed yourself with it. And if you have any further questions on protein or any other nutrition things, reach out to Elizabeth. She takes insurance now and she does consultations for people, and she would love to chat with you.
Oh, we love our cover for the podcast, and we have it thanks to Jennifer Osterhaus graphic design. She helped us choose the right colors, font, design to represent our vision for this podcast. She helps businesses up-level their marketing materials so they can increase their impact and elevate their brand. Visit the link in the show notes and check out all the services that she provides, and contact her today for a consultation. Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara DeLeon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.